Greetings of peace and paradise. Welcome to a We Soar Above chat. We are always looking for ways to try to make what we have found as a sea of miracles tangible for everyone who is seeking for being open, coachable, and teachable to transform their lives, whereby they can have a life that's rooted in preparedness and wellness. I am grateful for each of you who prayerfully will listen to this, because I know that within it, prayerfully will be tools that you'll be able to incorporate in your own lifestyle. Brother Aziz, we were just talking, and I wanted to really speak to you from the perspective of being a maintainer, a provider, and a protector. As a man who has been in law enforcement and has been in the world of service as a servant transformative leader, you married a woman that you knew had issues, right? Like, I married you very transparently, telling you I have chronic disease, despair, and discomfort issues, and I don't know what that looks like going forward. But I know that I've been able to quell all these symptoms for so long. And I remember when we first got married, you looking at me like, this junk is expensive. Do you
Yeah.
still remember that, the difference between the theory and when you saw the bill?
Oh yeah. That was definitely a serious misconception. And with those who were saying, "Hey, I want to live right, I want to eat right, and I'm going to go to this store and go to that store, and I'm going to get my, you know, potions and everything of that nature." But when you got there and that added up, and I look at 3 items and it's like almost $100, I'm like, hold on, time out. That's like, hold on, we need to figure something out here. Is there a cheaper way, to kind of to get your echinacea and all these other type of herbs? But the thing is that you have to look at the bigger picture. And the reason
Mhm.
why most people feel that is a big problem is that because they don't have a healthy relationship with their finances. And so I know I needed to, as a maintain provider and protector, that I had to, one, step up my wellness, two, and also step up my pockets as well. So I had to.
So he went on mute, and it's probably because he's driving, but I know him sufficiently to know that he stood up both, right? So we finally got a pregnancy that went full term. We were 1 month early, but from the difference of stillbirth, which is, in your 20 some week pregnancy versus, in my case, in several of the pregnancies, or, having a baby who is, small, but you still good. It was a blessing to be able to recognize that we had what we needed to, continue on that journey successfully. What I found to be most impactful is that too often in our community, we don't recognize that a lot of what we think is disease that's chronic that we're stuck with, it's really rooted in toxicity. And so I was the girl who had become a farmer. I was the girl who was an herbalist. I was the girl who was a coach. I was the girl who was helping everybody else get to the goal. But I was the same woman who was consistently getting pregnant and having miscarriage after miscarriage, stillbirth after stillbirth. So I clearly wasn't reaching the end goal. And what we recognized, that it was really rooted in maternal toxic stress. And so it is what it is in that dynamic. And even with all the things that I strive to do, if I'm showing up in communities where they are under attack environmentally, my body was getting hit with the same things. And it didn't matter that I didn't live in the neighborhood, right? 70,000 chemicals you're getting hit with every day. Your babies in utero, 200 chemicals. If we don't recognize the issues, then we just keep falling into the problem. So I finally, like I said, got the baby. But the question was, how was I going to be able to be a mom if I wasn't alive? My sugars had skyrocketed to 5 and 600. My pressures had skyrocketed to 220s, 230s, 240s, over 120. So for those who know those numbers, those are not typically where you are awake. And I fortunately was. That meant for me some real soul searching, because I don't eat the things that typically people eat. I don't do the things that typically people do, but my body had been impacted because I had surrendered my body to the Western medical model of care with insulin and with high blood pressure medications. And there is a normal calcification that comes when you put those kinds of things in your system, because your body is not deficient of that medication that they're giving. So my body's rebound was horrible. And the normal things that should have happened in the delivery processes didn't happen. And it didn't matter that I knew and that I had requested. If you're in certain spaces, it just is what it is. So we wanted to figure out ways to address the fact of what one of my mentors, and actually several of them, had said in terms of the baseline for most Black women wasn't there. And if you're not even in a space where you're safe enough, even though you're doing all of these really great things, your body has so many things going against you that it's just not okay. So, long story short, I found myself again in another crisis. And I guess I had had over 20 some years of crises at different iterations to the point that it was kind of like, come on, another trial, another test. But I'm grateful now that I've learned to be grateful for the tests and the trials, because I'm finding that in the trials and the tests that I'm going through, they consistently be my way of better able to serve our community, who is a lot less prepared than I am traditionally. And then I'm able to then figure out, okay, let's drill it down, right? I'm a systems girl. So let's drill it down. Let's figure it out. So my husband and I are very prayerful people. And I prayed right when they were saying that I had to go back into the hospital because the numbers that I had, my body wouldn't be able to sustain itself unless I got onto an IV drip. And I knew that wasn't for me. And I knew that my baby was too little for me to be gone, especially in the midst of a C-19 pandemic. So what do? Well, in my case, I prayed. And most people say, huh? Yeah, that's what I did. Because I know that the creator within connects with the creator without to get what needs to happen. So in doing so, I was motivated to make a call to somebody I didn't expect to call, because it's not a person who I had that kind of affinity towards, but obedience is better than sacrifice. So in making the call, the person on the other end starts talking to me about cellular detoxification using something that I'm very familiar with. And I knew that it was the one thing you could take while breastfeeding and be safe. And it's the one thing you could take while pregnant and be safe. So I'm saying, okay, let's see, right? Then they started telling me about the fact that this company had a certificate of analysis that was third party. I'm like, great, because I don't trust you. And most nutraceutical companies I don't trust. So that's the only way you're going to be able to get me to actually think that maybe what's in there is what actually is on the piece of paper, because I come from a tradition that teaches that there are people who you should not trust. And so as such, I wouldn't be gullible enough, right, to just throw my body and my baby to, or my loved ones or my friends or my circle, to people that I know that like to profit off of other people's pain and don't care, because profits are more important than the people. I got literally the things that you see on the screen. If you have ability to see the screen, depending upon where you're listening to this recording, you may or may not be. But I started a regimen of Daily Detox Plus, Restore, and V Plus. Daily Detox Plus having micronized Planectolite, zeolite, and it literally can go in. It doesn't matter if it's what's in the cell. If the cell has something bad in it, it's going to sweep that stuff out. So much so that I know people who 9 years ago had stage 4 cancer, and that stage 4 cancer got swept out within less than 8 weeks. But their doctor, who was their friend, had told them that they would be dead within less than 8 weeks. So when you start seeing a sea of miracle after miracle after miracle on people that really ain't all that righteous, you begin to recognize that maybe it's not the people that are just so fortunate, maybe it's what they have. So I'm real big on, if I see a sea of miracles, people who had autism, who hadn't been talking, who had not actually been able to even potty train, who were way beyond the years that you typically would do that, were then talking. And I'm looking at them years later and they've gone to college. So I'm saying, whoa, a sea of miracles. Fast forward, I talked to my husband, and my husband probably said, why, oh, why? But he ultimately ended up being happy because it was a pretty inexpensive bill. And we called two of our other friends, and they both ended up getting the same wholesale account. And we both said in each of those conversations, we don't know. Like, we don't know what it is, if it's good or bad, but we know what prayer means. And if you follow what prayer gives you, right, the result. But what we know is that there is a certificate of analysis. So we know that what's in the bottle is what it actually says in the COA. And so knowing, because we're farmers, knowing what ingredients look like, because we do manufacture products, we knew that the synergy of certain things get amazing results, and that it was logical that a certain set of ingredients would produce, if put together properly, a sea of miracles in a time where a lot of people, meaning 60% of people who were dying of COVID, were dying because they had high sugars. So if we could get my sugars down, then right? If we could get my pressures down, then right? And so we knew from before I got pregnant that I had an aluminum poisoning. So I couldn't do it while I was pregnant because you can't really safely detox unless you have the right one. And so we weren't going to take any risks because of my history. Fast forward, I started on Daily Detox Plus, Restore B Plus. My sugars were down 150 points between a Friday and a Monday. I have other friends of mine who then ended up really blowing me out the water because they would end up dropping numbers way higher than mine. And I didn't even think you could do that, right? A lot quicker. And some of them, unlike me, weren't willing to change their diet. So they would talk about drinking sodas and that kind of thing. And I even remember when one of my besties ended up laughing at me because when I was listening about a testimony from somebody who had a sugar of like 6 something and their sugar was down to 120 within 24 hours. I was like, well, I see the problem. I just need to eat some pork and drink some soda. And of course, the person started changing colors as I said it. But that's kind of an inside joke, right? When you look at adding to the mix Region X, which supports human growth hormone development, all of us by the age 25, our bodies stop producing human growth hormone. All of these things you can literally go on DuckDuckGo or Google. You can search and find the information. But typically what happens is you'll go and you'll buy something. It doesn't have a certificate of analysis. You really don't know what's in it because I am a manufacturer. They always sit there looking at us saying, hey, you know, you can put all this other stuff in there and it'll decrease your cost. And I'm saying, yeah, but that's what it says it's free of. Well, that's the joke, right? The FDA doesn't have a rule that says you need to be truthful. You just need to meet the requirements of wording that they say. So it can be free of something, though it still has something. So for example, you'll hear me say that our CBD is THC free. What that means is that it does not have a detectable level of THC, right? So we have to be aware of what things means if we're going to end up working within spaces that there's different rules, different things, different wordings to maybe what logic might be. Fast forward, I ended up adding the THC-free CBD products and I lost my inhibitions because I recognized in that my C-section pain that had hurt every day, all day, and at that point we're more than 10, 11 months postpartum, all of a sudden it didn't hurt anymore. I don't know if my husband's able to unmute, but if he is, if you could jump in, because you were the one that got awakened at 3 o'clock in the morning. And that was a pretty profound space and time. And he may not be available to do so.
I'm here. I wasn't quite sure if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah, basically my wife, she woke me up 3 o'clock in the morning saying that my C-section scar is not hurting. So I'm like, why are you waking me up 3 o'clock in the morning? But she was excited because she had hurt for the whole 10 months, every single day. And I'm sure, you know, people will know that when someone has a C-section, they sometimes hurt for years. They're still feeling the effects of that. So with this product helped her out to not have no discomfort. I had to do nothing but submit and just cheer her on because it was definitely a major achievement.
And a blessing. So then we ended up adding to the regimen the Relieve Cream, which is another THC-free product, the CBD oil, and the Dream. And the Dream is another joke with him because I stayed up all night intentionally because I am against traditionally melatonin products because I'm of the mindset that says if you put in certain things, it's going to tell your body not to produce what it needs to produce. So, but what I love about our Dream product is it has just enough of what it needs to get you jump started when you know you're not following the rules of good sleep hygiene. So if you're going to stay up late past 11 o'clock, if you're going to not end up sleeping 6 or more hours. In many cases, you need to sleep a lot more than that if you're going to have Wi-Fi, cell phones, or anything like that to disturb your body's natural time, in which it's the only time that your body is able to fully focus on healing and repairing itself. And it was a trip because I went to bed and it was 2.5 hours later and we're in the process of doing a renovation and he's banging on stuff. And I'm like, what are you doing? But I laugh because when I woke up, the normal migraine that I would typically have if I stayed up all night, the normal pain behind my eyes, the normal fatigue wasn't there. And the joke was, I was like, I feel so good. Like I really thought that it had already been an 8-hour part of sleep. It wasn't until later when I looked at the clock. I'm like, oh my goodness, like what? Fast forward we continued this journey consistently. But the big reason why is my husband wasn't having to really pay for it. It wasn't just sharing the information with people and not waiting to figure out. It was really just being transparent and letting them know there's this thing, right? And we found this thing. And this wellness preparedness kit has been amazing for so many other people in their lives. So let's just see what it does. Literally just investing $4.99, you could then end up getting, right, the ability to have a wellness preparedness kit that's going to have all of the major things that we had there. But there's one other thing before I get onto that, and that's the Moringa Plus. It's called M Plus. And Moringa is a superfood that I can't explain to you enough. That was when the weight that I had gained because I had been sedentary for more than 31 weeks, started flying off. But forget about me. We have people who had major gastrointestinal disease issues of incurable diseases who all of a sudden went from having really bad situations that most people don't even want to think about, colostomy bags and those kinds of things. They came into becoming just people that worked out, had amazing lives. Another person who dropped 149 pounds, never worked out really until stuff started falling off, right? And then was inspired to kind of do a little bit, but never anything major. So for me, dealing with the types of people that I deal with in my circle, it's really big for me to be able to know that you're going to get a win, whether you do everything to the best of your ability, or if you just simply take a dropper full of everything and just take that shot and then you're done, right? Because if it's not doable, if it's not something that's duplicatable, if it's not something that you're going to be able to have the discipline and desire to do consistently, it doesn't matter what's in the bottle. And so it didn't matter how much I would give people these big old barrels of things of food, right? They weren't going to eat it all. And if you don't eat enough of it, it takes 10 carrots to do what 1 carrot used to do. So if you're not getting what your body needs, you're just not going to get it. Fast forward, we can just go on past this slide, please. It's so important to recognize that, you can keep going, that the way in which things happen is such that you can either be a person that's buying things retail, or you can be a person who is focused on living your best life and helping other people live their best life. I'm of the opinion that you don't want to keep things to yourself. And the joke is, if you look at people's day-to-day life, look on anybody's social media. I don't know if you're like me, I typically post, hey, look, I'm here. Hey, I just bought this. But it's sad because you do it and you're marketing for them for free and they never send you a check. That's the part that, as I actually started thinking about how we teach the 5 pillars of balance, it's a healthy relationship with your mind, your body, your family, your finances, and your community. Well, if at the end of the day, you're marketing for someone and they're not sending you any money, there's something wrong with that relationship. And I've always said that, it needs to be a give and get, right? So this became a real win-win because we watched people get their wholesale account, and within 3 days, because they took action, they weren't waiting, they weren't trying to figure it out, they weren't trying to get their PhD in this, they were able to do $5,000, right, in 3 days. If we do a stream of this, if we do a whole bunch of people doing the same thing, and at the very top of the compensation plan, it's over $220,000 residual income. That means month after month after month. Well, if I help people stack money, then how many people that talk from a scarcity mindset will then be robbed of the excuses and can then instead take their time, take their energy, take the reason for which they were purposed here, the reason for which they were birthed to be the prayers answered of their ancestors. How much will we be able to transform the world? So I just kind of wanted to take this time, and I'm grateful that you guys have stayed with us to get this information. You can text us at 757-982-7777. But most importantly, get back to the person that shared this with you, because we want you to have your own stream of miracles. And let us know. Some people only want an extra $100. Some people just want to maybe just get what their bill is going to be every month. But I know the numbers show that an extra $500 to $1,000 changes a lot of people's families, right? Drastically. So we're here to go and with you, run beside you with wherever your vision is willing to grow. And I'm just speaking from the perspective of one who I've watched my loved ones change. I've watched so many people transform, because it's one thing to say I have a diagnosis of C19. It's another thing to say I have a diagnosis of cancer. It's another thing to say I have a diagnosis, but it's a very different thing to say that I am prepared to give my body a fighting chance to do what it was naturally designed to do. We wish you well, we wish you peace, and we thank you.